Karen stood in my driveway demanding that I hand over my house keys, insisting she had HOA emergency access authority. What she did not expect was that when 4 of my former Special Forces teammates showed up after a single group text, and she panicked and called 911 to report armed intruders. The dispatcher calmly informed her that she had just summoned police to a gathering of decorated combat veterans, and that filing a false emergency report could result in criminal charges. My name is Henry, and I am a retired Army Special Forces Master Sergeant with 22 years of service, including 6 combat deployments. I retired 2 years ago and settled in Cary, North Carolina, near Fort Liberty, where many of my former teammates also chose to make their homes. We stay close. We look out for one another, and when someone signals they need help, we respond without hesitation. What Karen failed to understand when she tried to bully me into surrender my property keys was that Special Forces operators do not tolerate intimidation, and that my backup arrives fast when a line is crossed. I live in Pinewood Commons, a subdivision built in 2012 with comfortable middle-class homes. Many of the residents are military families or veterans who understand service, discipline, and respecting boundaries. The HOA handles basic neighborhood upkeep and usually keeps a low profile. For 2 years, I lived there without a single problem. My neighbors knew my background, and we had solid relationships built on mutual respect and minding our own business. That piece ended 5 months ago when Karen moved in 4 houses down. She had golden blonde hair and immediately launched a campaign to get on the HOA board. Voter turnout was low, as usual, so she won easily, and within 6 weeks she had installed herself as HOA president. Almost immediately, she fixated on what she called emergency preparedness and property access protocols. Karen became obsessed with the idea that the HOA should have keys to every home in the subdivision. She began sending emails claiming emergency access was necessary for safety inspections, maintenance issues, and liability protection. Most residents ignored her outright. No sane homeowner hands over house keys to an HOA president, and there is no legal requirement to do so. Instead of backing off, Karen escalated. She started issuing violation notices, asserting that refusing to provide emergency access keys violated HOA safety standards. 3 weeks ago, she showed up at my door on a Saturday afternoon, carrying a clipboard and a small lockbox. "Henry, I need your house keys for the HOA emergency access program," she said. I told her flatly that she did not need keys to my house. She insisted all residents were required to comply under HOA safety protocols. I asked her to show me where that requirement existed in the covenants. She said it was a board-approved measure and demanded keys to my front door, back door, and garage. I told her she was not getting keys to my house. Period. She warned me the HOA would take enforcement action. I told her to do whatever she thought she could. She made notes on her clipboard and left. 2 days later, I received a violation notice imposing a $1,000 fine for failure to comply with emergency access requirements, along with demand that I turn over my keys within 72 hours. I contacted a property attorney named Patricia and had her review the HOA covenants. She told me there was absolutely no provision requiring residents to provide keys to the HOA and that the entire demand was fabricated. Karen had no authority to request keys or issue fines over it. Patricia advised me to ignore the fine, document everything, and let her know if Karen escalated so we could pursue harassment charges. I followed that advice and went on with my routine. Last Tuesday, I was in my garage working on my truck when Karen walked into my driveway accompanied by 2 men wearing shirts labeled HOA Security Services. She told me I had refused to provide emergency access keys and announced that she was there with HOA security to collect them or change my locks and issue new keys to the HOA. I told her she was not touching my locks, was not getting my keys, and needed to leave my property immediately. She claimed the HOA had authority to ensure emergency access. I told her she had no legal authority and that she was trespassing. One of the so-called security men stepped forward and claimed they were authorized to assist with lock changes if residents were non-compliant. I told him plainly that if he touched my locks, I would consider it breaking and entering and respond accordingly. Karen pulled out her phone and threatened to call the police. I told her to go ahead and do it. While she was dialing, I sent a quick group text to my former teammates who lived nearby. Need backup at my house. HOA president trying to force entry with fake security. Non-emergency, but could use presence. 8 minutes later, 4 vehicles rolled into my driveway and along the street. Out stepped Marcus, a former Special Forces Sergeant Major, Vincent, a retired Green Beret warrant officer, Luis, a former team sergeant, and Connor, a retired combat medic. All 4 were physically imposing men who still carried the posture, awareness, and conditioning of active duty operators. They walked up my driveway and positioned themselves around me. Karen's eyes went wide. The 2 fake security guys immediately backed away. Everything okay here, Henry? Marcus asked. I told him the woman was demanding my house keys, and had brought these 2 men to force the issue. Marcus turned his attention to Karen. Ma'am, he said calmly, why are you trying to take this man's house? You trying to get into this man's home? Marcus asked evenly. I am the HOA president, Karen snapped. I need emergency access keys for all properties. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Does he owe you money? Do you have a court order authorizing you to enter his property? Karen hesitated. No, but the HOA requires... The HOA requires nothing, Marcus cut in. You have 0 legal authority to demand keys to someone's private residence. Karen was already back on her phone with 911. I need police immediately, she said loudly. There are 5 armed men threatening me at 2847 Pinewood Drive. Connor spoke calmly from beside me. We are not armed. We are veterans standing in our friend's driveway. Karen had the call on speaker, clearly trying to record everything. The dispatcher's voice came through clearly. Ma'am, are the individuals displaying weapons? They look like soldiers, Karen replied. There are 5 of them. Are they threatening you or showing weapons? The dispatcher asked again. They're just standing there, but they're intimidating. Ma'am, the dispatcher said, standing in someone's driveway is not a crime. Are you currently on private property? I'm the HOA president conducting official business. Has the property owner asked you to leave? I raised my voice so the dispatcher could hear clearly. Yes, I have asked her to leave my property multiple times. She is trespassing. There was a brief pause. Then the dispatcher responded. Ma'am, if the property owner has asked you to leave and you refuse, you are trespassing. Officers are en route, but you should vacate the property immediately. Cary Police Department arrived 6 minutes later. 2 officers, Officer Thompson and Officer Wallace, stepped out of their patrol cars and quickly assessed the scene. Officer Thompson looked at the 5 of us. Gentlemen, what's going on here? Marcus answered calmly. Our friend called us because this woman was attempting to force him a hand over his house keys and brought these 2 individuals to pressure him. We came to provide support. Officer Thompson turned to Karen. Ma'am, you reported armed men threatening you. I don't see any weapons or threatening behavior. They're intimidating me, she said. There are 5 military men surrounding me. They're standing in their friend's driveway, Thompson replied. That's not illegal. Officer Wallace had shifted his attention to the 2 men in HOA security shirts. Who are you 2? He asked. The older one answered nervously. We're private security hired by the HOA. Hired to do what? To assist with property access compliance. Officer Wallace's tone hardened. Were you planning to enter this residence without the owner's permission? The HOA president said she had authority. She does not, Wallace said flatly. If you had entered that home without consent, you would have been committing burglary. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, why did you report armed individuals when none of these men are armed? I thought they might be, she said weakly. They're military. Filing a false emergency report is a crime, Wallace said. You reported armed, threatening individuals when the reality is several unarmed men standing peacefully. Officer Thompson added, Ma'am, you are trespassing. The homeowner has asked you to leave. If you refuse, you will be arrested. Karen and her fake security team left immediately without another word. The officers stayed another 10 minutes. I explained Karen's pattern of demanding house keys and her escalating harassment. Officer Thompson documented everything and noted that her 911 call appeared to be a false emergency report intended to misuse police resources to support an unlawful demand. "Mr. Rodriguez," he said, "you should strongly consider a restraining order. This behavior is escalating and concerning." After the police left, my teammates stayed for about an hour. We sat on the porch drinking coffee and catching up. Several neighbors stopped by to show support and meet my friends. One of them, a retired Marine named Douglas, shook his head and said he was relieved to see someone finally stand up to Karen. "She's been terrorizing this neighborhood for months," he said. "Maybe now she'll back off." The next day, with Patricia's help, I filed for a restraining order. The court granted a temporary order barring Karen from coming within 100 feet of my property or contacting me in any way. The Cary Police Department completed its investigation into the 911 call and determined it was a false emergency report. Karen was charged with misuse of 911 services, a misdemeanor carrying fines and potential jail time. The HOA board called an emergency meeting after learning what had happened. The remaining board members were horrified to discover Karen had been demanding house keys and bringing fake security to residents' homes. They voted unanimously to remove her as president and issued a formal statement clarifying that the HOA has no authority to demand keys and that Karen's actions were entirely unauthorized. Karen accepted a plea deal on the false 911 charge. She pled guilty and received suspended 30-day jail sentence, probation, 200 hours of community service, and $800 in fines. 3 weeks later, she listed her house for sale and moved out within 2 months. A young Army officer and his family bought the home. When he introduced himself, he mentioned he'd heard about the incident. "I'm glad to be in a neighborhood where veterans look out for each other," he said. "That's exactly why we moved here. My 4 teammates and I still get together regularly." The incident has become one of those stories we share with other veterans about the importance of staying connected after retirement. Marcus told me later, Special Forces guys respond when one of their own needs backup. Always have. Always will. Karen picked the wrong person to bully. If you've dealt with HOA presidents demanding access to your property without legal authority, share your story below. Subscribe for more stories about bullies who learn the hard way that veterans always have each other's backs.